overrun by neocon warmongers. And with the mass media in the pockets of the cabal elite, there remains one bastion of truth amidst the confusion. One beacon of light shining through the murky fog of spin and Islamophobic propaganda. That's right, it's the NP Radio Security Council, the final frontier in the fight for freedom and fairness. I give you the Security Council.
أبدا لن نحيد أبدا لن نحيد أبدا لن نحيد عن خطى الإيمان دربنا درب قويم دربنا درب قويم بالهدى القرآني أبدا لن نحيد أبدا لن نحيد أبدا لن نحيد عن خطى الإيمان دربنا درب قويم دربنا درب قويم بالهدى القرآني سائر في طريق الحق يا جند الله.
Assalaamu'alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. You're listening to the Security Council on Middle Path Radio. And I'm your brother Ahmed, as usual, heading this Security Council. And with me on the panel tonight, as always, is brother Zain, Robert the Beast Mugabe.
Oh, thank you for the...
Mr. Mugabe.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I think your translator is showing you a slight delay on your end. You need to really, fire that translator.
It's the Mr. Producer. I don't think I can't hear myself.
Mr. Producer's he's doing mighty fine, as far as I can tell.
Okay, that's better.
Well,
that's better.
That's that. There you go. Well, he sounds pretty good. So
yeah, thank you for the introduction.
Yes, Mr. Mugabe. I mean, really, at the end of the day, this is what we, kind of do on this program. And tonight we've got a very packed show, and we've got three very special guests, waiting in line to speak to everybody on the air. And this is obviously in light of the current issue. We've already talked about the Paris shootings, and we've talked about the Charlie Hebdo. Tonight we're going to be talking about what's happened since then. And we know some of the reaction, especially in the UK, government reaction, I'm speaking in regards to it, is coming from, for example, the Community Secretary, Eric Pickles. Once again, we've talked about him in the past.
Mr. Pickles.
Mr. Pickles. And Mr. Pickles has actually written a letter.
An interesting letter.
A letter full of love, gushing, one of those love letters. He has written to 1,100 mosques, or should I say 1,100 Imams. Now, this letter has caused quite a little bit of controversy. Rockers, yeah. And not everybody seems to be happy with the contents of that letter. When I was saying it was gushing with love, I was obviously being sarcastic. So, I've seen the contents of the letter, and I think it's actually the reaction that he's getting. And not only has he got a reaction, but even the Prime Minister, David Cameron, has waded into the whole conversation. Obviously, Mr. Eric Pickles is not acting alone. He does have the blessing of the Prime Minister when he is writing this letter in the first place. And this letter was actually a letter asking Muslims, Imams and mosques, to do a lot more about extremism, or shall I say Islamic extremism, and that British Muslims in the UK, I heard him on radio saying earlier that, to use his words, Muslims, they have to demonstrate what British Muslims stand for. And that sounded kind of provocative to me. That's quite divisive language, and it's a kind of language that you use when you suspect something or someone, or when you hold somebody in suspicion. So, Brother Zain, I don't know if you've got your own views on this. Of course, we are very opinionated on the Security Council. Absolutely. We have to be. It's a very big responsibility us permanent members hold on the Security Council. I think the translator from Zimbabwe is having extreme difficulty translating our permanent members' reactions. Are we still there, Brother Zain? Have we still got your ear?
I like the way you just held your ears and you just...
even though you are sat directly next to me.
Absolutely, no. I think this one's working. Yeah,
I
this
do have
mic's
to go
working.
into character when we are on the Security Council.
No, this is how you are normally, anyway.
Stop exposing me.
Yeah.
I'm an ordinary guy when off air. So yes, so that's really what we're going to be talking about, and we do have a few guests. I'll give you the lineup. Our first caller, I believe, will be speaking to brother Harun Khan. He is the Deputy Secretary General of Muslim Council of Britain, also known, of course, abbreviated as MCB. And he will be speaking to us because, of course, MCB has been in the news and have been talked about quite a lot.
I think MCB was one of very few
Yes.
organizations or institutions that actually spoke about this letter.
And I take my hats off to them.
Absolutely. No, kudos to them. I mean, not many institutions, unfortunately, or imams or personalities came up, and Islamic Muslim personalities I'm talking about came and spoke about this and shared their opinions. I mean, I heard MCB even recently, I think on the day, was it Monday or something? Yesterday. They came and spoke on, what's it called, that radio, LBC.
Yes.
And
yes,
and they were challenging that there, and amongst other forums and so forth.
So MCB have actually spoken out. Well, I don't want to make it sound more than what it is. They have responded. They have written also to the Culture Community Secretary, and it has caught the attention of David Cameron, specifically MCB's letter.
Not just Cameron. I mean, it caught the attention of the British media. Caught the attention of actually, I think they even mentioned it to different politicians in Sky News and other news channels.
So a lot of people are talking about it, and we know there's been this a short clip that's now been uploaded onto YouTube. Was that Sky, or was that one of the Chuka Amuna? He stormed out.
He stormed out
from the studio.
Yeah, but I think
that wasn't to do with the.
Yeah, I think
issue.
he was more. He was a bit more upset, and he
because of
stormed
the
out.
way the presenter was. Behaving with him.
Yeah, that's right. Rather than what was said, but there is a difference, and obviously there's a difference between how Labour and Miliband kind of approached it, and how David Cameron's approaching it. Although they're on the same boat, he comes out a bit more. What's it called? Less aggressive, if you want to call it, stance on the issue.
As everybody, our listeners know, on the Security Council, we don't see a huge difference between the Labour Party and the Conservatives when it comes to the Muslim community. But at least Chuka Amuna did say that he hasn't read the letter, so he's not going to be forced into giving a reply.
The other thing, really, to be honest, and this
you
is
don't
my
make
opinion,
much of that.
Yeah, because the thing is, this is election season. So therefore, everyone wants to win points with their electorates and so forth. Yeah. So
of course, every political party has their ethnic minority representative, and Chuka Amuna is one of their poster boys for that, to appeal to the ethnic minorities. Despite towing the party mainstream,
like you got
upper class
like
line.
you got what's that fella's name? Lord Ahmed, is it?
Oh, Lord Ahmed.
Yeah, Mr. Ahmed.
Mr. Ahmed.
Yeah.
Lord Ahmed. Well, yes, he was actually, I believe, one of the co-signatories of the letter.
He's the one who was put up forward right in the front, shown as a Muslim. It's coming from a Muslim. It's not coming from Mr. Cameron, nor is it coming from the government as such. It's coming from a Muslim to a Muslim.
That's
or
right.
two Muslims.
But just to correct you there, we have to be as accurate as possible. Lord Ahmed actually...
I said shown to be.
Yeah, I understand, but I'm just trying to be doing some due diligence here. Lord, we don't want our listeners calling back and telling us that he's not really a Muslim, and so on and so forth. So we've got a lot of people waiting online. Definitely really eagerly awaiting the calls and text tonight. Make sure you get in touch with us on 07 477 080 248. That's 07 477 080 248. We are going to go on a very brief break. And just before I do, I want to say in advance that when we have our guests speaking tonight, we won't be able to take any calls from you directly, but text messages will be very, very welcome. That was the condition on which we got our guests to speak to us tonight, that they will be only speaking directly to us. But rest assured, you guys know us very well. We don't mince our words. If you do have questions, put them through to us via text message. Give us your phone calls afterwards. We'll be tweeting your comments on our Twitter account. Go follow that account. It's at Middle Path Radio, and the number is again 07477 080 248. Just before we go to the break,
now if you got any questions directed to MCB, then text us in the next few minutes, and hopefully we can get you through to our speakers. Then
that's correct. Let's go to the break. But just a second, I did want to say that we also have an Imam with us who will be speaking to us on air, because this letter was addressed to 1,000 Imams.
Yeah.
So we've, alhamdulillah, managed to secure
1,100.
one Imam, alhamdulillah. And we intend to also speak to one of the campaigners from MEND community, formerly known as I Engage, and they deal with matters related to Islamophobia. And they'll be talking to us about the reality of Islamophobia pre-Paris and post-Paris shootings. So we'll hear from you straight after this break.
You're listening to The Security Council, a zero-bull, straight-talking, current affairs program.
وحده لا شريك له له الملك وله الحمد يحيي ويميت لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له له الملك وله الحمد يحيي ويميت بيده الخير وهو على كل شيء قدير لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له له الملك وله الحمد يحيي ويميت بيده الخير وهو على كل شيء قدير. There is no God but Allah. He is one, He has no partner. To Him dominion, to Him the praise. He brings life, death and life again. In His blessed hand is all goodness, and He has power over everything. La ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah lahul mulku wa lahul hamdu yuhyi wa yumitu biyadihi al-khayr wa huwa ala kulli shay'in qadir. Subhanallah hamdan lillahi la ilaha illallah. Allahu akbar wa lillahi alhamd. La ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah lahul mulku wa lahul hamdu yuhyi wa yumitu biyadihi al-khayr wa huwa ala kulli shay'in qadir. There is no God but Allah. He is one, He has no partner. To Him dominion, to Him the praise. He brings life, death and life again. In His blessed hand is all goodness, and He has power over everything. La ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah lahul mulku wa lahul hamdu yuhyi wa yumitu biyadihi al-khayr wa huwa ala kulli shay'in qadir. Subhanallah hamdan lillahi la ilaha ولله الحمد.
Welcome back. This is the Security Council, and you are listening to Middle Path Radio. We have a few guests lined up to speak to us tonight, and really, we want to get straight to the calls. We are speaking tonight with Brother Harun Khan of Muslim Council of Britain, and he is waiting on the line to speak to us. And as soon as I give him the cue, for those of you who just tuned in, I just want to say that we are speaking to Brother Harun, who is the Deputy Secretary General of the Muslim Council of Britain, and we are talking to them tonight because of the fact that they've responded to the letter sent to the mosques by Communities Secretary Eric Pickles. We want to see what Brother Harun has to say, and we're also very interested to hear your views. You know how to contact us. We've given out the number already. We will be trying our best to put your views across to our guests tonight. The number is 07477 080 248. That's 07477 080 248. Brother Harun Khan, Assalaamu'alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
How are you today?
I'm okay, alhamdulillah. Jazakallah khair. Thank you for inviting me onto the show.
Jazakallah khair to you for coming on air with us on Middle Path Radio. We understand that you are extremely busy with a busy schedule, especially since the recent letter. Of course, you have responded, and it has has caught the attention of some very high-profile people, namely people in the government, of course, as well as in the British media. I've got a few questions that I'd like to ask you, if that's okay. I hope you'll be able to address some of them. Just the first question is, do you think it's fair that despite the widespread condemnation, Eric Pickles is asking Muslims, in his own words, to demonstrate what British Muslims actually stand for?
Okay, so let me give you some background first.
Sure, go ahead.
How this all came about. So late on Sunday evening, MCB received an email from the BBC informing us that Eric Pickles had made a comment earlier in the day with reference to Muslims and tackling extremism. And they also mentioned that he's written to 1,000 Imams of mosques. I mean, it's not clear. It's a bit of both, really. We don't know if it's specifically gone to Imams or if it's specifically gone to mosques. So it's a bit of both. So there's 1,000 letters that have gone out, basically, according to them. And at that point, we had no knowledge of this. So MCB wasn't informed of this by anybody. We hadn't seen any letters. We hadn't received any information. So based on that, we responded to the BBC that evening because they said they wanted to update their website with our comments.
Right.
So we that's when we first sent a very sort of strong response back, saying what we did. Based on what we knew at the time, there was a comment around saying that we need to display our Britishness more.
That's correct.
Which we were very found very disturbing, to be honest. So the response we were sent back saying that we felt, and actually I was quoted in that release, which then kicked off a media storm, to be honest. I mean, it basically saying that it's almost like pandering to the far right. The kind of language that the right wing far right would use, because what you're almost affirming as a minister is that Muslims in this country are not really playing their full part in society, and which is exactly what the far right use, the kind of language. And I think that really struck a chord across the media. So first thing on Monday morning, started getting calls from 6:30 in the morning asking for interviews. Now, coming back to your original question, and then, yesterday, whole series of interviews, as you've mentioned already, you've seen some stuff where we gave some interviews. Now, is it fair? I think that was the crux of the discussion. letter in the main, I mean, we have acknowledged a follow-up letter.
Yeah.
And I think even in some of the discussions it came out, the intention looks good. There's some good language in there around saying, Muslims have done so much, but it's almost like, it's okay, you've done all of this stuff, but actually there's more you need to do.
Yeah.
And that's where we found, we didn't agree with him on that at all. We've been, I mean, you guys have obviously born here. I've been here for decades now, born and brought up in this society. And to be honest, it's quite offensive when somebody says to you that you need to be more British when you're living your everyday life in society, contributing fully to this society, to our country, and then someone from government comes and tells you that you need to be more British.
Exactly.
So yeah, it was very unfair. And actually, even on some of the interviews yesterday, the radio, BBC Radio 4, they went out. Funny enough, they did some just spot surveys with people in Whitechapel. So I was waiting in the studio to speak, and they played back some of the recordings they'd done where they spoke to people on the street and asked them about this letter. And obviously they hadn't seen the letter, but they just asked them about how do you feel that he's written to Muslims? And they said they found it quite offensive that he's written to people.
And that's generally the kind of sentiment we are noticing from amongst our listeners and the text messages and the kind of communication and feedback we're getting. And I would take it maybe a step further, especially again based on the feedback that we're getting, and looking at our Twitter feed and just general responses that people are making in regards to this letter. I think a lot of people are asking this question that this kind of singling out mosques kind of insinuates that the Muslim community share in the responsibility for the Paris shootings, which is really quite a serious, I wouldn't say allegation, but quite a serious, insinuation to be making in the first place.
It's not just Paris. I think it's the whole issue around how the government and some of their advisors view extremism and radicalization. They seem to be convinced on the view, for whatever the reason is, that it's happening in mosques. So actually looking back at the letter again now, that he originally wrote, he sort of goes from one saying, we're proud to be British communities, but there is more work to do. We must show our young people who may be targeted. And then it goes, these preachers of hate have no place in our mosques. Now, yesterday, one of the things that I reiterated, I think probably in every interview I've done, is that there isn't a problem in mosques. Okay. There is no extremism. There's no issue of radicalization in mosques. People are not being influenced like this in the mosque. Sure. Right to the end of the day, where I said, give me some evidence. And, I was really pressed quite strongly on Channel 4. Can you guarantee it? Obviously I haven't seen every mosque. I said that, but I can give it a level of guarantee. I'm convinced that actually the mosques don't generate terrorists.
And how many mosques and Muslim institutions are actually signed up as part of the umbrella Muslim Council of Britain? How many organisations are you guys currently?
So we've got 500 mosques, Islamic institutions, Islamic organisations.
So MCB has got quite a high level of credibility here when it's speaking, to British media.
Definitely, they know that, and MCB has that credibility in the media as well. So that's why generally we are the first port of call when issues relating to Muslims arise. We get lots of emails from different media channels asking for comment, asking for interviews, etc.
Sure.
Because they don't have that reach. On the mosque issue, in terms of numbers, we've got our affiliates, but there are a large number of mosques. We never claim, MCB, Muslim Council never claims to speak for all Muslims. Okay. We always say that we only represent our affiliates.
And these mosques, they kind of represent from different spectrum of the Muslim community, or?
Yes, I mean, MCB is non-sectarian. It's very diverse.
Okay.
We've got a mix of all schools of thought, because MCB itself isn't a sort of school of thought based or sectarian based or even fiqh based. We don't comment on fiqh issues. mostly on politics and media. So
Sure.
it's really about what affects people generally. So we have there's a couple of big Shia organizations which are affiliates of MCB as well.
I've got one or two last questions before I move on. I just have this here for you. Do you approve of the kind of divisive approach and language that the community secretary is using in dealing with the events in Paris? I mean, some would say that Muslims are being held accountable for the acts of lone individuals, whilst Christians or seculars are not being asked to, say, for example, do more about pedophilia or what some will call acts of white terrorism, especially in light of grenade bombs being thrown at mosques in Paris and up and down different parts of Europe. Do you think this kind of language is helpful? I mean, shouldn't there be a little bit more inclusiveness? Shouldn't the British government be doing more to make life easier for their minority communities and to help them be more included instead of kind of pointing the finger directly at the Muslim community?
Well, the letter itself I think it was insensitive in the sense that, following the atrocities in Paris, now every majority of Muslims across the country, including MCB, and lots of people came out very strongly condemning the atrocity that took place.
Yeah.
Now, if you send something like this, just within 2 weeks of something like that happening, it immediately gives the impression that, like you said, some people would assume, especially people who don't really have good understanding of Islam and Muslims, would assume, okay, so the government's written to the mosque, so they must be part of the problem.
Exactly.
The other issue, the insensitiveness of it, is that in the same time period, there's been a spike in anti-Muslim attacks. And I know you've got one of the guests from Mend, and I'm sure he'll talk more about that.
Yes.
But we know of specific cases of hate mail, especially Finsbury Park Mosque. That got news coverage that day. Lots of hate mail, lots of threats, lots of online, especially online, social media. Even if you go to MCB's Facebook page, every time we put up any positive news stories, underneath it you'll see a lot of sarcasm, a lot of not necessarily threats, but lots of nasty stuff, basically.
Yeah, a lot of
Islamophobic
comments
and this is unfortunate in the world we live in terms of social media. People are free to say what they want to say.
Okay.
But yes, it was really wrong time. The other issue is that MCB wasn't involved in this process at all. And now what we're not saying that we want the government to send the letter. But I think if you're truly a government trying to, deliver for the people, then the first thing you do is consult and seek advice on what's the best way to do things. So
instead of kind of engaging with you, an umbrella organization of 500
exactly, and we are an umbrella. We're not saying we've got everyone. You can talk to all the other 1,000 imams that you've done, fair enough. But also we represent a big section of that community, and to exclude us in that way obviously hasn't been helpful at all, and I think that was demonstrated quite well yesterday.
Okay, just as time is really running out for us, Brother Harun, I've got one last question. I mean, in the past, people have criticized MCB for being silent on proverbial and literal attacks against the Muslim community. I mean, what would you say to them, especially now that you have responded on this occasion, and that is obviously contradicts this particular view? What would you say to them, especially with regards to things in the past?
Okay, so in terms of MCB, I mean, it's coming up to 1997 we started out, so what's that, 18 years MCB was created. Long history. The MCB as an organization was set up actually following sort of the whole Satanic Verses affair. Post that event, some senior leaders got together and decided that they needed a body that represents Muslims on Muslim issues. That's where MCB started out.
Okay.
Over time, MCB became the sort of place to go for media and for response. In terms of your question, most of the time, yes, the impression is that MCB seems to be the only one that condemns, terrorist attacks, extremism and condemnation. That's not what MCB is there for. MCB, firstly, the reason we feel the need to condemn attacks is one of our primary objectives is to safeguard our community.
Brilliant.
Now, if somebody doesn't come and say something, especially from the Muslims, say for example after Woolwich, our job in the first instance is to minimize the risk to our community.
Sure.
Because immediately something happens, there will be a reaction on the streets, and people will respond. So if we don't say something, people respond, and it's. And when I say something, I don't mean just for the sake of it. We're serious about what we say. We can say what we think. That if somebody has acted in the name of Islam, claiming to act in the name of Islam, then we need to clarify that actually this isn't what we believe. In terms of representing the community, you're right. I think we have to acknowledge probably in recent years, we haven't been as proactive in ensuring that we highlight some of the concerns of Muslim community. We have done, I think, probably where we fell as an organization, we are very limited in resource.
Sure.
My time is voluntary. All of us give our time voluntarily, and we only have a handful of staff running a small office, and the demand is much greater than what we can provide for. So that's where we really struggle. I mean, in the ideal situation, we would be pushing out a lot more PR in terms of informing our community what we actually do. And just to give you some quick highlights of things that are up and coming. So very soon we'll be presenting a report next month in February. It's called Muslims in Numbers.
Okay.
So this is an in-depth analysis of the Muslim statistics based on the 2011 census.
Sure.
Which will actually help. And in fact, MCB was one of the key players in ensuring that the Muslim question went into the census in 2001.
Sure.
So not a lot of people realize that. And the one other thing that we'll do this year is we're producing a Muslim manifesto to inform and help people to make sure they know how to vote for the upcoming election. So they're informed and what questions to ask their local representatives.
I hope you will forgive me for interjecting, Brother Harun. We are actually a little bit over time. Not at all. We are very happy that you've taken the opportunity to speak to us. We're very glad, and I actually appreciate the frankness and honesty in speaking to us. I was going to ask you how can people get involved, but really, and it is written down here right in front of me to ask you that question. But we are really out of time. Is there a website or some place that people can go to?
Yeah. Well, website definitely. I mean, mcb.org.uk.
Okay, mcb.org.uk.
You can send us an email there. If you know people, you know me, you can reach out to me anytime.
Definitely.
Inshallah, we're happy to help and work with people and get young people involved.
We'll be doing that. Thank you very much, Brother Harun. Assalaamu'alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So, brothers and sisters, those of you who were listening just now, we've really run out of time, and we do need to go to a break because that's our segment for this part of the program. Hopefully, we will hear from you in literally a couple of minutes, and we'll have another guest on the air. We'll have Imam Abdullah al-Hasan from Masjid Khadijah to speak to us from an Imam's perspective with regards to this letter that was sent to Imams by the Community Secretary, Eric Pickles. So be with us very shortly. Assalamu'alaikum.
You're listening to The Security Council, a zero-bull, straight-talking, current affairs program.
Allah, Allahu Allah, Ya Allah, Allah, Allahu Allah. Allah is the Lord of the heavens and the earth. His power was true before all things and the birth. We are all creations that He created. Nothing goes past Him, He is the exalted. His power and might is reality. All that we receive are through His mercy. A leaf does not fall except of His grace. Trials and tests and all things that we face. Allahu, 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 Allah. Allahu, 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 Allah. Allahu, 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 Allah. Allahu, 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 Allah.
A day will come that we will surely see all life in the earth, including you and me. A day of fear and calamity, all creation will stand before the Almighty. None will speak, standing with fright, aware of the end, close to the sight. Either the gardens of bliss or the fires of hell, it is Allah's decision that no one can tell. Allahu, 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 Allah, Allahu, 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 Allah, Allahu, 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 Allah, Allahu, 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 Allah. Oh Ummah, today we are weak and oppressed, but remember Allah has allowed this. If you fail in your deeds and don't follow Islam, Allah's wrath will descend upon all of those lands. If you love Allah, you must follow Muhammad. Allah will love you, forgive you like He has said. Don't make the world your home in the test. Make it the heaven of Allah, and that is best. Allahu, 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 Allah, 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 Allahu, 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 Allah.
Welcome back. Assalaamu'alaikum. You are listening to the Security Council again. We've just finished our break. I'm your brother Ahmed, and we are talking to you about the recent letter written by Community Secretary Eric Pickles, sent to 1,000 plus Imams or Masajid up and down the UK. We've just spoken to brother Harun Khan from the MCB regards to what their views were in relation to that letter. And we've currently got Imam Abdullah al-Hasan from Masjid Khadijah currently waiting to speak to us right now. And of course we are speaking to him to get the Imam's perspective on this whole issue. And I just want to take him straight on air because we have other guests waiting to speak tonight as well. Assalamualaikum, Brother Abdullah, do you hear us loud and clear?
Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Yes, I hear you loud and clear.
Jazakallah khair for taking the time to come and speak to us on Middle Path Radio. Brother Abdullah, I know you had a very busy schedule and you know it's the end of the evening for you. We want to just swiftly get through these questions, and probably it's the best for all parties. Well, as an Imam, really, do you think it's the fault of Imams and mosques that people are killing in the name of Islam?
I mean, as an Imam, and I'm sure many other Imams in the UK would agree that extremism or terrorism or terrorist actions that took place in France, or the incident that took place in the UK in 1977, and some other terrorist activities, you cannot blame that upon the Imams or the mosques, because those extremists, they don't attend the mosques. They don't believe in attending the mosque. They don't believe in learning traditional, sacred knowledge from the mainstream Imams and the mosques. Most of them, as many of the commentators, journalists, and others, they've mentioned that a lot of them, they get the information from the internet, from certain videos that are online, and they are exposed to these kind of extreme ideas from there, not from Imams and not from mosques. Most of the Imams that I know, I'm sure all of the Imams in the UK and the mosques, they preach Islam in a tolerant manner. They preach and they teach Islam in a very comprehensive way, that we should respect the law of the country, that we should better this country, the society that we live in. This is what Islam says of us, not that they teach extremism or terrorism. And I think to tell you the truth, that in the last couple of weeks, the MCB and other organizations, along with the help of many Imams who signed a very good letter condemning the Paris attack, which actually generated a lot of positive comments from Muslims as well as non-Muslims. And unfortunately, this incident now has clouded that effort. And I think it's really, really sad. I think generally what the Imams will be saying is that the message in the letter by the Eric Pickles, the message of calling out and saying that, look, the government alone cannot defeat extremism, which is right, but to single out the Muslim community and to single out Imams would be seen amongst many Muslims, not all Muslims, and many other non-Muslim, many non-Muslim members of the community as really insulting, because there are so many crimes that are taking place in the UK. Unfortunately, you have knife crime. You have people, die. There are more people who die due to knife crime or alcohol consumption, or there are more people who are being raped. There are children who are being abused, for example, by many we know in the news. It's not something private, it's public. There are many children who are being abused by some priests, not all priests, by some priests in the churches. We don't see the government ministers sending letter to all the churches, to all the priests, to combat child abuse.
And on that point, Imam Abdullah, we've just actually received a text message from somebody calling himself Joseph from London. He says, this letter sent out by Eric Pickles, perhaps he needs to send one to every church and synagogue as well, which is kind of echoing what you've just said, if that's correct, yeah?
Yeah, I think, as I said, that many people, many Imams, I think, the message of the letter that it says that the government alone cannot tackle extremism, that we all need to work together, the community leaders, individuals, organizations, government, the police, everyone needs to work together to combat extremism and violence. But to single out the Muslim community at this time where after the Paris attacks, there have been many people, in France, for example, people have been murdered because of that. Muslims. Recently, a man has been stabbed 17 times in front of his wife in France. In Germany, if you look at Germany, what is happening, the far right is increasing the number. I mean, if you look at what the Chancellor of Germany, Angela Merkel, what did she do? After the Paris attacks, after the march that they went to, she went back to returned to Germany,
right.
And she did not write a letter to the Muslim community and the Imams to tackle extremism and so on and so forth. She went on a march with the Muslims against extremism, against the far right numbers increasing in Germany. And this is what the politician needs to do. They need to reassure the Muslim community and stand with them to combat the crime, not just terrorism, not the extremism, but combat crime, other crimes in our society.
Having heard what you've said, that regarding mosques and Muslim institutions and the role of imams in kind of doing good work in the community, and the fact that extremism isn't actually, or people are not getting radicalized in the masajid or the mosques themselves, why do you think that the community secretary felt it necessary to actually send that letter to imams?
Just to add, I mean, look at the individuals that carried out the 7/7 attack in the UK, for example, right? And the ignorant and criminals who carried out the attacks in France, and many other incidents. These people, first and foremost, they're ignorant of Islam. They do not believe in acquiring sacred traditional learning from imams and mainstream mosques. They consider, and this is something we need to point out, that every time an incident takes place, the Muslim community, the imams, the leaders are somewhat required. The media, from the media, from the politicians, not all politicians, but many more politicians, that we have to apologize. Muslims in the UK have to apologize for the actions of few individuals, ignorant criminals, thugs in France,
This
just
brings
because they
this-
happen to be Muslim. And this is something, when Muslims say this, there's a double standard.
Right.
And there is a singling out of the Muslim community. And when the youth see that, and when the imams, yes, imams have to condemn this. If an attack takes place
And-
under the
on
under the
that-
name of
on
Islam,
that
we
point
as
of
imams, we as
double
human
standard,
beings together,
Imam Abdullah,
we have to condemn it, but not apologize for
Sure,
it.
sure.
So when we do that, unfortunately, many some youth may not appreciate, understand the nuances and the complexity of
Sure.
the actions of the community leaders. They assume that the imams are sellouts. So those extremists, not the youth, but those extremists, they probably believe that the imams in the mainstream mosques up and down the country in the UK are sellouts. They don't, tackle many of the issues that they think that they need to tackle. The imam's job is not to police people. Imam's job is to educate people, give them spirituality. To tackle extremism and violence is the job of the police.
That's exactly one of the questions that I had actually prepared for you tonight, which was that the role of imams and mosques is to help people, nourish people spiritually. Is it something that mosques should be considering to be spying on the worshippers that come to the mosque? What will that do to the congregations that attend the prayers at mosques up and down the country? I mean, if that is the kind of environment and atmosphere that the government is trying to create, are imams actually on board with that kind of thinking in the UK?
I mean, any sensible person, Muslim, non-Muslim, believer, non-believer, whichever background they're from, if they know that someone is intending in their community, if they are aware and they have sound knowledge that this person or these group of people are intending to carry out a crime. As Muslims, non-Muslims, as human beings, we have to do something about it. We have to report them to the police. But the question is, with all that is happening, they talk about extremism and others, and the definitions of non-violent extremism and all those different discussions. That's why many imams will say, look, we welcome the letter from Eric Pickles, but he needs to now meet with the community organizations who are working in the grassroots, who are working with the youth, who are working in the community, meet with the imams who want to meet with him, meet with the community leaders and organizations who want to meet with him, and so that they can work together in defining the problem and clarifying the root causes of those problems, and then they can find solutions to tackle those problems. So I think it's many people will have problems with the letter. I'm sure many Muslims, non-Muslims have many problems with the letter. But let's look at it from the angle that, okay, yes, Pickles, right? You're a public servant. You've written this letter. Regardless of the problems that of the letter, now you've called out to the Muslim community. The Muslim community, the imams, I'm not talking about myself, but I'm sure the imams and the community leaders out there are willing to sit down around the table and discuss with him how to combat extremism.
Right. One last question. As the imams are speaking and doing a lot about combating extremism, a lot of our listeners have already aired their view that there are root causes to extremism. I know you've described them as ignorant people, but a lot of people will say that they're not justifying their attacks themselves, but they are saying that what is the position of the imams when it comes to the depiction of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the way that they were. What kind of strategy do the imams have in place when these kind of cartoonists are actually being extremely racist and Islamophobic? If you look at their publication, there's been a lot of racist stuff on there, not just against the Muslim community, but against, let's say, the black community in France. Here's a question that I've got right now from a text. A brother from London, he's asking, why don't the imams condemn the far-right extremists, the plight of the Muslims around the world, the rise of violence against Muslims. These Imams are saying they are doing it for the safety of Muslims, but they are either scared, ignorant, or on the payroll. That is the view of one of our listeners, of course. How would you respond to that kind of attitude?
And you know, that actually proves my point earlier that I made, and the fraud argument of some people. Look, many people, unfortunately, they don't understand the nuances. They don't understand complexity. They don't understand, the limitations that people might have, organizations, or even government might have, and authorities might have in trying to do something. So, for example, Imams have spoken out. I'm sure Imams have spoken out against the far right about racism. I know many Imams up around the country who've organized open days, who organized, campaigns, who organized in their own local community, how to, with other non-Muslim communities, how to combat racism. So, just because a person may not have heard about it, and unfortunately, when these kind of incidents take place, it's the media that promotes this. But the good work, the amount of good work that Imams are doing, the mosques are doing in terms of the food banks that they're providing in the community, tackling domestic abuse, tackling gang-related problems, many different issues that they're dealing with. Unfortunately, the media is not promoting that and not celebrating that, because that's how, unfortunately, the media is. It's not newsworthy for them. So Imams are doing that, and I think Muslim community needs to support the Imams, needs to support the community organizations.
Yes,
it's not all
definitely.
about
And I do have to apologize, Imam Abdullah, for interjecting again. We are actually 6 minutes outside of my schedule. I do really appreciate you taking the time and speaking to us. And likewise, I've also got a question here about how to get involved or to contact you. I've got a question about Spring Foundation, but I really don't have time to ask you these questions. We have another guest that we want to take on air. I've got some text messages also, my producers showing me to read to you. They are directed to you, but I'm afraid I have to kind of manage this and say Jazakallah khair for coming and speaking to us on Middle Path Radio. We hope to speak with you in the future again. Shukran lak. Assalaamu'alaikum. So there was a quick call with Imam Abdullah al-Hasan who's an Imam and Khatib at Masjid Khadijah, if I'm correct. And, those were his views. I know a lot of you have sent in your text messages. We will read them, brothers and sisters. We won't definitely forsake you. But before we do, we're going to have to go to a very quick break and take our final guest for tonight's program. Brother Shiplu Miah is probably already quite unhappy that we have delayed him. He is representing MEND, formerly known as I Engage, and he'll be talking about the reality of Islamophobia in Europe, or specifically in the UK. So I'll hear from you straight after this break. Assalamu'alaikum.
You're listening to The Security Council, a zero bull, straight talking, current affairs program. Middle Path Radio, your #1 online Islamic talk station.
في إحساس أراه زاده التحنان في أبتغي حضن يتيم طاهر الروح نقيا في إحساس أراه زاده التحنان في أبتغي حضن يتيم طاهر الروح نقيا كي يحيل ظلمة القلب بإحساسه ضيا كي أرى غابات أيامي بأضلاعيه فيا كي يروي خافقي من طهر أعماقه ريا حضن أطفال اليتامى يترك الوجدان حيا يملأ القلب حنانا دافئا رافقا دفء الندية بين أرواح اليتامى يسكن الحب نقية قد حباهم ربنا نبضا بريئا أريحية نشعر الإحساس فيهم صافيا عذبا زكيا ضمني طفلي منيا ضمني أكثر هيا.
Download our app MP Radio from the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store. Follow and like us on Twitter, Facebook and Google+.
أي بأس إنما اليتم عطية ما حوى اليتم انتقاصا ظاهريا أو خفيا ليس فيه أي بأس إنما اليتم عطية واسألوا التاريخ تلقوا فيه إثباتا جليا كم عظيم رغم يتم كان بالمجد حفيا كابن حنبل وابن باز عانق الأفق عليا والذي يسعى بنا كي نبلغ الجنات سعيا يا رسول الله أحمد غير أيتام البرية عاش يتما في صباه ثم قد صار نبيا عاش يتما في صباه.
You're listening to The Security Council, a zero-bull, straight-talking, current affairs program.
Assalaamu'alaikum. Welcome back to Middle Path Radio, and this is the Security Council. We've been speaking to Imam Abdullah al-Hasan, and we previously spoke also to Brother Harun Khan of MCB. Brother Zain, I understand.
Just before I think we move on to the next speaker, just read a couple of texts.
Yes, go ahead.
We've been receiving quite a few texts, but this an interesting text, another one. It says, we seem to be condemning what happened in Paris. What if it was an inside job?
Okay.
What are we condemning? We need to verify news before these so-called English imams start condemning the actions without knowledge of who did it. Now, this is a conspiracy theory or I'd call it a conspiracy theory because of some of the information has come out. Obviously, others haven't.
Sure.
Yeah. So that's one.
There are inconsistencies in the video, or what people perceive to be inconsistencies in the video footage, and just the fact that one of the common ones that they cite when they're saying it hasn't been fully verified is the fact that the shooters apparently left their ID in the car. Despite being very professional otherwise.
One of the things I did rashly say is a conspiracy theory, but I would say that there are some ambiguity, if you want to call it, at least on that. But the other things are,
some Muslim groups have already taken responsibility for the attacks anyway. Yeah. So I think it's been cross-verified by.
If they're saying the Islamic term fatabayyan, to verify the information,
yes,
Muslim, then I agree. But because you even mentioned now, some Muslim groups have taken responsibility. That's, I think, the verification kind of thing done.
Yeah, and with the speculation or the skepticism, rather, is the word I'm looking for. With skepticism, we have to know where to draw the line as well. Sometimes, if you don't draw the line, you keep asking those questions, you never know where to stop. And to the extent that there are some theories that say that Osama bin Laden, for example, he is actually an American agent, acting to be a Muslim terrorist, and he's paid by the Americans to grow a beard and behave as a Muslim. So these kinds of ideas, I hear them, and I do warn everyone who I meet who share these views that we need to be able to draw the line, because where then do you draw the line? If these things aren't true, then how can you verify anything.
Now, how can you verify what we
anything
just
at
said
all.
now?
Yeah.
You know, you just mentioned, oh, is this, is that, or this person is like that, or that group is like that. How are you verifying this information?
Yeah,
it's another conspiracy.
Yeah, where's the evidence that he is an American agent, or these guys are Mossad, or these Paris shooters were, with the what is it, the GIG or the French, equivalent of the SAS.
Yeah.
So I mean, we really, there's never no end when it comes to those kinds of questions.
Sure.
Brother. But we appreciate your texts and your views, and
just
we do read them. That's why we read it. We
Yeah.
could have just said, "Oh, this is a conspiracy theory."
Yeah.
Don't bother reading it. But Brother Zain said, "No, we read all our
right.
our texts, inshallah."
One more interesting text that I think I should read out is, it says, Assalamu'alaikum, what needs to be talked about is the government shifting the blame from the foreign policy to the mosques. I work in a mosque and they received this letter. Eric Pickles needs to write a letter to the ones who are creating terrorists through their wars in the Muslim world. Yasin from West London.
So this is Brother Yasin, who's already received, actually, he works in the mosque and he's received the letter. And what's his crux of his message there?
He's saying that stop blaming the foreign policy on mosques. He's saying that the
look to the root of the cause of terrorism or extremism,
That's right,
which is
that's
foreign
right.
policy according to him.
That's right.
And stop pointing the finger at mosques and the Muslim community.
Yeah.
That's a very valid point, and that's something that we've been saying very often on our program as well. And without further delay, we do have to go to our final guest for tonight's program. We have Brother Shiplu Miah waiting on the line to speak to us, and he represents Mend community, or just Mend. They are formerly known as Iron Gauge, for those of you who know of them in the previous brand name. Brother Shiplu Miah, Assalaamu'alaikum.
Waalaikum salam.
Jazakallah khair for coming and speaking to us on Middle Path Radio. We genuinely actually appreciate that. Welcome. I just wanted to ask you a few questions. I hope you won't mind, and I do appreciate it's already quite late, so I will be quite succinct in the questions that I ask you. It may appear a little bit sharp, but that's just the reason for brevity. Question number one is, maybe you can give our listeners, a snapshot of the state of Islamophobia in Europe prior to the Paris attacks, and then, if there's been an incline in Islamophobic attacks post the Paris attack.
Yeah, Islamophobia has been growing rapidly across Europe. I mean, specifically in Britain, where men focus most of our work in. In Britain, we've seen a rise after the Lee Rigby murders. In London alone, percentage of attacks against a Muslim went up by 139%. At 1 month, it went up by 197%. And in terms of how many attacks that is in numbers, on Muslims, that went up from 336 to 500 attacks on Muslims. So Islamophobia is a growing problem in the UK, and what makes it worse is that we don't actually know how bad it is. These are just figures that I mentioned that are based on Metropolitan Police data. But the problem is that most of the police forces in the UK do not record Islamophobia as a separate hate crime. So if you get abused or attacked by people for your faith, most of the constabularies in the UK, you can't report it as an Islamophobic crime. As a victim of Islamophobia, it will be just noted down as a generic hate crime. So even based on the figures, those are actually quite conservative figures. If we were to analyze across the country, I'm sure it would be much higher than that.
Sure, that's quite surprising to know that the police are not actually recording them as a exclusive incident.
I mean, of the roughly about 43 of the 46 forces in the UK, with the help of the work MEND has been doing with the police forces, there is now roughly about 13 police forces that have agreed to record Islamophobia as a separate hate crime, just as they would do when it comes to anti-Semitism and so forth.
Do you know about any particular, stats or anything like that? Maybe you can share any kind of figures in terms of the kind of attacks that we have been hearing, drip and drab in the mainstream media. It doesn't normally get reported.
I mean, Teesside University did a research on this, and they've concluded that the vast majority of the attacks that take place on Muslims are in fact on Muslim women, and not just any Muslim woman, but Muslim women who adorn hijab or niqab.
So the main victims of Islamophobia are actually the women, Muslim women.
Oh, that's really, really, shocking to hear as well. I mean, since the Paris attacks, I've heard of a statistic of about an increase in, a recording of 50 attacks already, and it's not been a long period of time since the attacks. Is there any kind of truth to this kind of report? I mean, we've been hearing, sorry to interrupt again, we've been hearing like hand grenade weapons being used, gunfire.
Yeah, I mean, within, I think, a day or two, multiple mosques in France were firebombed. There was a Muslim man of the age of, I believe, 47 or so, that was stabbed 17 times, but what was apparently an Islamophobic attack and killed. So there is a huge rise of Islamophobia in France. But even here in the UK, mosques have reported death threats being sent to them, hate mail, even drawings of the Prophet Muhammad in derogatory manner being posted to mosques. So we have seen this increase in Islamophobia in the UK, but obviously more so in France.
Okay.
Even, sorry, Brother Shiplu, this is Zain speaking. Even like, I think last weekend, Friday, you had Britain's First going around parts of East London in front of masajids and kind of harassing Muslims.
Yes. And it's interesting because recently Theresa May mentioned words regarding the Jewish community and saying how a lot more needs to be done to stamp out anti-Semitism, and she's absolutely right that anti-Semitism needs to be stamped out, just as all forms of racism needs to be stamped out. But what's interesting is that she said it on the back of the French attacks, the shootings that took place, saying how that resulted in the Jewish community feeling unsafe, and which is most likely true. But likewise, Muslim communities are also feeling the attacks, the repercussions of the attacks in France by having all of these Islamophobic attacks taking place. Yet we don't see similar measures being proposed by Theresa May or even Scotland Yard. In fact, Scotland Yard said that they will be increasing the patrols in Jewish areas, but we're not seeing similar protection being offered to the Muslim community despite Islamophobia rising since the shootings in France.
Have men actually engaged with the police and advised them to actually do anything about this?
I mean, men does regularly engage with the police forces across the country. My colleague, Fatima Khan, who takes the lead on this, undoubtedly is doing so since the attacks in France.
Okay, just one other question on this. Are men doing anything in regards to white extremist groups or far right extremist groups like Britain's First and others who are going into masajids and who are harassing and actually at some points being violent against Muslims? Are they doing anything to ban these groups?
I mean, what we are doing actively is telling the Muslim community that they need to first and foremost report any form of Islamophobia that they experience, whether that's violent or non-violent, whether it's verbal or physical. All forms of Islamophobia needs to be reported to the police. The problem we have at the moment is there's a huge underreporting. I mean, the police stats themselves say that on average 47% of hate crimes go unreported. So if we don't report the Islamophobia, then we have no official records, and the police have no records of where Islamophobia is increasing and what areas need better resources, police and other forms of resources to tackle Islamophobia. So what MEN is doing is actively engaging with the security to tell them that the first thing they need to do is actually report these crimes, these intimidations by the likes of Britain First to the police and and flag it as a specific Islamophobic crime. Brilliant.
And I think the Muslim community is still experiencing some difficulty coming to grips with the whole concept of Islamophobia. We recently saw how, because Islamophobia is not just, I was corrected just only a couple of days ago when I was referring to only the violent attacks. But Islamophobia actually, encompasses all forms of hate speech and other forms of, kind of hatred in general and bigotry against Muslims. Yeah. But it also, of course, includes the more violent crimes. And we've just reported that, some Muslims are losing their
even
lives.
Discrimination. Recently there was a study out showing that how Muslim Muslims are the most discriminated against when it comes to job opportunities.
Exactly.
That as well is Islamophobia. And if we do witness discrimination at the workplace based on our religion, then that is a crime as well, and that needs to be reported too.
Sure, absolutely. And that actually leads me to ask you the question, especially in light of the fact that we've had some very witty, let's say, diversions being set up by members of, say, the Quilliam Foundation, namely Majid Nawaz, dismissing the cartoons as not being racist on the basis of the technical definition of racism. How does one respond to? I believe some were presenting the cartoons as saying this is actually a racist depiction of Muslims in general. How does one respond to a dismissal of that kind on the fact that this is not actually racism? Islam is not a race, so it's not racist at all. These cartoons. So, what's the correct response to that? Something like that.
The response is that it doesn't need to be racism. Racism isn't the only form of speech or expression that should be forbidden. I mean, we have laws against hate speech against homosexual groups and so forth. So it isn't just racism; it's Islamophobia. That's why that term is there, because it isn't racism, but it's a different form of prejudice, and that is to hate, discriminate, insult, abuse a Muslim because of their faith. So it doesn't have to be racism, and it isn't racism, but it's a whole different type of hate crime, and that is based on one's faith. So the response is no, it's not racism, but it is Islamophobia, and just as other forms of hate crimes or hatred is forbidden, such as hatred against homosexuality and so forth in this country, likewise, it should also be a crime to be Islamophobic.
Sure. I'm going to read a text here. It says, how come if the same crime were to happen to Jews, there is normally an outcry and people are actually prosecuted? Why is the same not happening when Muslims are attacked or killed?
It's quite interesting and perhaps a lengthy discussion. It boils down to how the Jewish community is defined. They have been historically defined as a race and not a religious group. I mean, they are also a religious group, but they are also defined as a racial group. So Jews and Sikhs are classified as a racial group because they come from a particular culture and from a particular ethnicity. By and large, at least. So historically, the courts have judged the Jewish community and Sikh communities to be racial groups, and as such, the law of the UK protects racial groups, communities defined by race, better than communities defined by religion. And that's, in fact, a discussion that needs to be had in our community, in this country. That why is it that racial communities that are defined by race are protected better than communities that are defined by religion? Why is it that I can't abuse, insult, discriminate, hate, or incite violence against a community that is defined by race, such as the Jewish community, the community, or the black community, but we can do pretty much all of that, which I mentioned, which is abusing, using threatening words and so forth, towards groups that are defined by religion, such as the Muslim community? Why is it that we have that disparity? And men's cases that there shouldn't be a disparity. Rather, all groups should be protected equally.
Some very valid points there, Brother Shiplu. One final question on and trying to actually merge the two different issues that we were talking about today, because they are linked. We're talking, of course, about Theresa May's statement or her views that anti-Semitism is on the rise, and she's very worried for the Jewish community and how vulnerable they're feeling. But we're also talking about the letter that Eric Pickles had sent. I want to say, taking those two matters and looking at that in one go, do you think there's a little bit of irresponsibility on behalf of some of these senior politicians, ministers from our government, especially considering the statistics that you've already given us on the rise of Islamophobia? On one hand, you've got Theresa May worried about anti-Semitism being on the rise, and most people I've been on Twitter, and a lot of the people are saying that when you hear about anti-Semitism today, you're not thinking about far right. You are automatically linking it to the Muslim community, that the Muslims are the ones who are being anti-Semitic. Again, people are, adding the dots and saying that, again, kind of singles out the Muslim community as a target for reprisal attacks. And add to that, on the back of Theresa May's comments, we've got Eric Pickles writing the letter to Imams to do more about tackling extremism. So people are kind of putting two and two together and making what they may of this, and it's making the Muslim community feel very vulnerable. Do you think the ministers could do a lot more to kind of safeguard their minority communities other than just the Jewish community?
Yeah, I mean, a lot needs to be done. It's to put it mildly, we can say that it is irresponsible. Eric Pickles' letter is irresponsible, and it doesn't. I don't see why he's writing to the mosques, for instance. Mosques is probably the last place where people are, quote unquote, radicalized. His letter, implies that radicalization of people who end up committing crimes of terroristic nature are doing so because they're getting some sort of training or some sort of radicalization in mosques, and that is far from the truth. If anything, what leads to this sort of radicalization is the foreign policy, and that's what's missing from his letter, or in fact in the entire narrative and argument regarding this whole issue, is that radicalization is perhaps being done more so because of foreign policy. And in fact, every single attack that's taken place by these extreme minorities, they have cited reasons that link back to foreign policy. Right. And the other thing is that if it was that Islamic teachings or traditional Orthodox mainstream Islamic teachings that's giving rise to these sort of fanatical attacks, then why is it that we haven't seen similar attacks from the Muslim community in the UK in the 60s, 70s, 80s and 90s? Why is it that it's only started taking place in the 2000s after the war that was declared in Afghanistan and Iraq? So clearly there is no link to traditional teaching that takes place in mosques. Rather, it has a lot to do with foreign policy.
Brilliant. Okay, Brother Shiplu, we are completely out of time, and again, we apologize to you for taking you on the air a lot later than we agreed. We genuinely hope that we can speak with you again in the future.
Thank you.
Jazakallah khair. Assalaamu'alaikum. So that was Brother Shiplu Miah from Mend community. They are actually working very hard, as you've heard, speaking and with victims of Islamophobia and trying to record as much information as possible with regards to Islamophobia. And we really do need to, again, I do apologize to everyone listening. We weren't able to ask him. That was a written question for me. How can people get involved with MEND? How can they get in touch with MEND? I know for sure you can at least follow their Twitter account, which is at MEND community. If you do direct a tweet at them, I'm sure they will give you further information as to how you can get involved. And the same applies with Muslim Council of Britain, who was one of, we had Brother Harun Rashid representing them earlier on in the program. And Imam Abdullah al-Hasan is also available on Twitter. I believe it's just at Abdullah Hasan, and you should be able to contact him also. Before we go on to our final break, we want to give out our number one last time, and we'll do a quick roundup of the calls after the break. Our number is 07 477 080 248. That's 07 477 080 248. Do send us your messages, and we'd much prefer to hear your voice. Call us again on the number 07 477 080 248. I'll see you after the break.
You're listening to The Security Council, a zero-bull, straight-talking, current affairs program. Middle Path Radio, your number one online Islamic talk station.
زاده التحنان فيا أبتغي حضن يتيم طاهر الروح نقيا في إحساس أراه زاده
تحنان في أبتغي حضن يتيم طاهر الروح نقيا كي يحيل ظلمة القلب بإحساسه ضيا كي أرى غابات أيامي بأضلاعيه فيا كي يروي خافقي من طهر أعماقه ريا حضن أطفال اليتامى يترك الوجدان حيا يملأ القلب حنانا دافقا دفئا نديا بين أرواح اليتامى يسكن الحب نقيا قد حباهم ربنا نبضا بريئا أريحيا نشعر الإحساس فيهم صافيا عذبا زكيا ضمني طفلي منيا ضمني أكثر هيا
Download our app MP Radio from the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store. Follow and like us on Twitter, Facebook and Google+.
أي بأس إنما اليتم عطية ما حوى اليتم انتقاصا ظاهريا أو خفيا ليس فيه أي بأس إنما اليتم عطية واسألوا التاريخ تلقوا فيه إثباتا جليا كم عظيم رغم يتم كان بالمجد حفيا كابن حنبل وابن باز عانق الأفق عليا والذي يسعى بنا كي نبلغ الجنات سعيا يا رسول الله أحمد خير أيتام البرية عاش يتما في صباه ثم قد صار نبيا عاش يتما في صباه ثم قد صار نبيا يا ابن ديني هاك قولي واسلك النهج السويا لليتيم عليك حق فرعه فعلا وهديا يا ابن ديني هاك قولي واسلك النهج السويا لليتيم عليك حق فرعه فعلا وهديا واحمه من كل سوء واطو عنه البؤس طيا كي تنال به ثوابا من لدن ربي رضيا قالها المختار كهاتين ثوابا أخرويا يا يتيما استعن بالله ثم لا إله.
You're listening to The Security Council, a zero-bull, straight-talking, current affairs program.
Assalaamu'alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to Middle Path Radio, and you're tuned in to the Security Council with me on the panel tonight. We have Robert the Beast Mugabe. Brother Zain, how did you find that last session?
Interesting, to say the least. I mean, we had Brother Shiplu. I mean, we heard from men before, and similar stats were given then. But having said that, I mean, since the Paris attack, I think it's increased many folds.
Let's not forget as well, the killing of Uncle Salim in Birmingham, and it's not long ago. I mean, this is our memory. Look at the way the rest of the world behaves when there are killings done in the name of Islam, for example, they don't forget, and that's one of their hashtags. We never forget, kind of thing. They don't let these kinds of things slide. Even with, and I take my hats off to the African Caribbean community here. You know, Stephen Lawrence was one of the many people who has been attacked but killed in this instance. So we shouldn't forget also Uncle Salim, and that wasn't even literally a long time ago at all.
No, I mean we had that 47-year-old Muslim brother who was stabbed 17 times, brutally murdered in front of his wife
in France.
Yeah, in France.
And there was no hashtag to say "Je suis Muslim," or we don't even know his name.
Exactly. I mean, and it's really been publicized in the media, mainstream media, as they say, whether it's the papers or even the channels, any of the TV channels.
Yeah, you have Theresa May, coming out to say that she's very concerned for the Jewish community, and she's very, very shocked to hear that the Jewish community don't feel safe in the UK anymore. But
safe from the police, because as far as I understand, the Jewish community from France, I mean, the ones that got held hostage, was shot by the police and killed by the police.
I mean, the police, I laugh at them on some occasions because we know they're institutionally racist, so I definitely laugh to their face. I couldn't care about that.
I wouldn't be surprised if the guy who shot them was racist
himself. Yeah. He was probably colluding.
He's probably anti-Semitic.
Exactly, he was probably anti-Semitic. He's colluding with the shooters to begin with, but they'll find some way to spin that into an Islamophobic police officer who tried to kill, an anti-Semitic Muslim extremist police officer who tried to kill a Jew.
Yeah, he probably reverted. He
radicalized
reverted 2 weeks ago before that, and then he went. He said, "Yes, perfect opportunity."
Yeah. So I mean, without giving rise to conspiracy theories, we're being humorous about the. That's the only way.
Being straight.
Well, I'm being humorous. Why? Because that's the only way you can actually deal with this level of Islamophobia. It's one of the ways of coping in the Muslim community.
You keep on saying humorous. I'm being straight here.
I know you. That's why you are the beast, my man. You are Robert the Beast Mugabe. And we heard from other guests as well. Brother Shiplu definitely highlighted the plight of Muslims. It's a very serious matter. I'm not making light of that at all. And that is why I did remind our listeners about Uncle Salim from Birmingham who was killed. We also know Birmingham University had the words "Islam must die" scrawled over their walls of the university with the swastika.
Hang on. Change that Islam.
Swastika.
Yeah,
the Nazi insignia.
That's right. Change that Islam to Jews must die.
Judaism
must die. What do you think the papers would have written
We
there?
know people from Britain First and from EDL are kind of suffering from low IQ, and they often refer to Muslims as Islam and Islam as a person. No, I'm not.
Muslimics.
The Muslimic ray guns, and Islam. Doesn't. Islam has to stop doing this. And even Tommy Robinson was found saying very similar silly things as though Islam is actually a person. My point is that those who scrawled those words on the wall of the university actually meant to say Muslims must die. Okay.
But just change that word to anything like Christians must die, or Jews must die, or black people must die. What do you think?
Or if it were the other way around, Muslims were to write something like gays must die.
Oh, hang on.
Or kafirs must die.
I have to say something. I mean, in terms of even
death to America or something like that.
What we did mention, blacks must die. I think black people have it similarly in the sense that they still get discriminated. So we can't say black. So I'll take that one out.
Yeah, that's why I wasn't joking about
because people ain't going to
police are killing. People ain't going to black people in America.
People ain't going to
make
a hoo-ha.
Police killed black people only a few years ago. In Tottenham, as we saw, which caused the riots.
Absolutely.
And look at that.
So forget about black people must die, because that's not going to make the news. That's not going to even make the news.
You brought it up. I heard our guest Imam telling us how these individuals were extremists and so on and so forth, and we know that nobody's going to be sitting here justifying killing cartoonists and stuff like that. But what we didn't hear enough of was the fact that there are roots to extremism. There are causes that lead to acts of terrorism. Okay?
I think one of our guests...
the parallel that I'm trying to draw... Sorry, Brother Zain, to cut you off. The parallel that I'm trying to draw is if we look at, again, the riots that did happen in and up and down London and outside of London as well, it was a reaction to the shooting of a man who was unarmed, basically, of a black person who was in his taxi, and he got shot dead.
And not only that, is how they were how his family was treated afterwards.
And again, similar to the cartoons, the shooting of that black person should not be looked at in isolation, because it's the black community who've been going through years and years of racism, who have been suffering at the hands of white supremacists and the general establishment at large. The police, definitely, as we saw from the, was it the Hatton inquiry that labelled them institutionally racist. So, you have to take the entire picture into context here. And the same applies for the Muslim community, the minority communities in France, the Algerians, and the way they've been treated. Let's not forget the whole colonial era where Algerians were being beheaded, taken photographs of, and then,
brutally tortured
as well. And then you've got the whole, the years post-colonialism, where Muslims in general, black people in general, and ethnic minorities included of all kinds, being subjugated to all sorts of maltreatment. Let's just look at Muslims now, since we're talking about this on an Islamic radio station. Muslim women, they talk about freedom of expression. Muslim women are not able to cover their faces without being arrested by the police, being fined, and having dozens and dozens of conditions laid onto them. So it's cheap when French people talk to me about, freedom of expression and a rich culture of satire. I think Asghar Bukhari made a very good point when he spoke to the media. And he said, it's one thing to say that the French are well known for ridiculing world leaders. Okay, it doesn't actually hurt those who are in power, those who are the majority, those who are, the establishment. You can make fun and ridicule and even mock and disgrace people in power. It doesn't harm them. They are in a position of strength. But it's another thing for that establishment, white people, for example, to be making fun of a minority community, ridiculing them, ridiculing, for example, homosexuals, ridiculing, African people, as Charlie Hebdo, the cartoons of that publication, has done. There are records of black people being depicted as monkeys on more than one occasion on that paper. So Majid Nawaz was definitely wrong when he said the paper is not racist. And so was Douglas Murray when he was wading in and saying, you don't know nothing about this newspaper. They're very leftist, they're anti-right wing, and he was chatting rubbish, as we could see, because it's on record. There are pictures of black people depicted as monkeys, slaves,
this is the new leftist.
Muslims in the same.
This is the new leftist. These leftists are racist, are Islamophobic, are hating on this.
So obviously the lines between left and right has definitely been blurred, especially when it comes to Muslims.
I think there's more left to that left.
So I think we are out of time. We did hear from Brother Harun Khan, and just to sum up that point, I have to say, I'm relieved, and it's a breath of fresh air to find that Muslim Council of Britain has responded, saying what it feels, and it does represent a huge number of institutions and mosques, and on this occasion they've definitely got it right. They've definitely got it right, and we have to finish I think on that point.
Just before we finish, we have to mention Jangle of the Week.
Oh, yes.
I think there's no.
You spoke to me on the break about this. I don't know how it slipped my mind.
There's no arguments on this one,
because there are only two candidates for tonight's Jangle of the Week.
You can call it two. I want to call it one candidate, but yeah,
you say really is only one candidate. Yeah. I was gonna try and squeeze in Theresa May here, but you've been outdone, my lady. It is now Mr. Eric Pickles.
Eric Pickles.
Eric Pickles. I mean,
bruv, I don't know what was that.
I was referring to my nose was slightly. I'm referring to Eric Pickles, mate. Stop having my biscuits on my tax money, and then I'll treat you with a little bit more respect. Do you understand? Yeah, freedom of expression.
Freedom of expression, mate.
That's why. So Django of the Week definitely goes to Eric Pickles once again. Is he 3-time Django of the Week? He's 2 times. Right. Nobody's made the 3rd time, but Eric Pickles is on quite a spree at this moment. He's looking like a very good candidate for a hat-trick Django of the Week.
Come on, Mr. Pickles, make it free.
Without any further delay, hashtag Django of the Week goes straight to Mr. Eric Pickles. We'll hear from you next week, inshallah, with your thoughts. Texts and calls, we couldn't get through to them. We've simply run out of time. We are already half an hour over time this week. Join us next week, inshallah. Continue this discussion on Twitter at Middle Path Radio. We'll hear from you again next Tuesday at 10 p.m. from the Security Council. Assalaamu'alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
In a world overrun by neocon warmongers, And with the mass media in the pockets of the cabal elite, there remains one bastion of truth amidst the confusion. One beacon of light shining through the murky fog of spin and Islamophobic propaganda. That's right. It's the NP Radio Security Council, the final frontier in the fight for freedom and fairness. I give you the Security Council.
أبدا لن نحيد أبدا لن نحيد أبدا لن نحيد عن خطى الإيمان دربنا درب قويم دربنا درب قويم بالهدى القرآني أبدا لن نحيد أبدا لن نحيد أبدا لن نحيد عن خطى الإيمان دربنا درب قويم دربنا درب قويم بالهدى القرآني سائر في طريق الحق يا جند
Middle Path Radio, your number one online Islamic talk station.
في إحساس أراه زاده التحنان في أبتغي حضن يتيم طاهر الروح نقيا في إحساس أراه زاده التحنان في أبتغي حضن يتيم طاهر الروح نقيا كي يحيل ظلمة القلب بإحساسه ضيا كي أرى